okay, now we've dumped wolves on the landscape through what? Emotional ballot box biology.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to let the citizens, the morons in Boulder and Denver that never even get outside, half of them, we're going to let them dictate wildlife policy. Now, where's this $53 million going to come when the wolves eat all the elk?
Yeah, no shit.
And why did we, just the year after we reintroduced wolves, why all of a sudden are we getting rid of archery elk tags? Well, duh, the wolves have to eat something. You can't have hunters killing the wolves' elk, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's all connected.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We got a special guest today, Cable Smith. You're the owner of Texas Outdoors Media. How's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, where are you located?
I'm in McKinney, just north of Dallas.
Oh, cool. How you like it up there?
Oh, I love it. I've lived in the Dallas area my whole life, but lived in McKinney like 14 years probably. But the only thing is you can't stop progress. So all the places I used to dove hunt it's now concrete, which kind of sucks. But
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll get into that. So you grew up in that area. Where did you go to school?
I went to Bishop Lynch High School, and then went to Baylor for 3 years, and then graduated from North Texas in Denton.
In Denton. Oh, I didn't know that's where it was.
Uh-huh.
I see their logos
Western,
around.
Career path. Denton's like a mini Austin.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Is it?
Yeah.
What's it like up there?
Very liberal. A lot of purple, blue-haired folks. You know?
Yeah, that's weird. I mean, Dallas is kind of like that too.
Yeah, it's getting there.
So what'd you study in college?
Radio, TV, film.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's how I got into this.
Well, what's that like? What do you learn?
Oh, like editing software. Like I use Adobe Audition. I was taught that in college, and I still use that for all my own stuff. How to make a commercial, how to report the news. You get to on-air DJ at the campus radio station. So, yeah, kind of all-encompassing.
And what'd you do after college? Like right when you got out, what'd you do?
I moved to Texarkana. My wife and I moved. We got married and moved there. I took a on-air, like a radio job there. And I wanted to do sports talk radio, so I was doing like my own show there. And then my boss, who owned the station, was like, you got to do a weekly hunting and fishing show too for all these Piney Woods rednecks. They got to get their fix. So I was like, cool. At the time, I only was really into dove and duck hunting. I had a lab, but I had never even shot a deer when I started that. And then kind of evolved from there, and that's how I started in radio. And then Obama got elected, and I got laid off in 2008. So I moved back to North Texas and actually started my own company on my in-laws' dining room table.
You think there's some correlation between Obama being elected and you getting laid off?
Oh, I mean, that's just the time frame. That's when the economic collapse of 2008 occurred.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's all Obama's fault.
Sure. Yeah.
That was just the timeline of the events.
Yeah. So you grew up hunting birds, but not necessarily game.
No, I didn't grow up hunting. I started hunting in college. I grew up fishing and camping. Yeah, mostly. My dad's eaten up with bass fishing. Still goes multiple times every week. But I didn't grow up around guns at all. So it was just something. My college buddies were like, "Hey, you have a lab? We're going duck hunting." And I was like, "My lab hates fireworks. He likes to swim, but that was like the extent of that." And they were like, "Bring him." And I was like, "Okay." So I had to like bartend for a couple weeks to save up enough money to buy a shotgun. And then we went duck hunting. And the dog, every time we shot, was trying to like run away from the blind. Had to tie him to it. He was a 100-pound lab. He was a big dog. And then they all sucked at duck hunting too, but somebody finally shot a mallard. And I let that dog off his lead. He went and got the duck, brought it back, dropped it at my feet, and then that was it. We were both hooked and never looked back.
So you're talking about your dog?
Yeah, my dog.
And then he wasn't afraid of guns after that, or what?
No, if you picked up the shotgun, he went and sat by the front door.
That's funny.
Like some mental thing in his head was like, I hate loud noises, but that one I'm going to put up with because it means I get to go fetch something.
Yeah. I mean, that biological urge is very strong.
Yeah. It was crazy.
That's pretty
And
interesting.
I don't think if he would have hated it, and I don't know if I would be sitting in this chair talking to you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good story. Origin story that includes a dog.
Which I got with a girlfriend, and she left, and he stayed. So
Yeah, well, that's you. I think you got the better end of that deal, probably.
Yeah.
So after college, you go to a radio station, and it's how I'm curious about this. Like, how did getting kind of talked into and then doing the weekly, not sports, but like hunting fishing show? How did that get you in to the rest of it? You know what I mean? Like, did it?
I just fell in love with it because back then, you couldn't do this today, but back then I could just call Duck Commander, and Phil's wife would answer, sweet lady, Miss K, and she'd be like, "Phil's duck hunting, but he'll be back at noon. If you want to call back at noon." Phil answers, and we record like an hour-long conversation, and then I air that for that week's show. And I was like, the people in the outdoor industry are way nicer, and not that professional athletes are all jerks, they're not, but they're way more approachable. It was easier to track them down. So I just kind of and my love for hunting was just growing exponentially at that point. So that's kind of how that evolved. And that was in 2000. In 2009, I started my own show after we moved back to the DFW area, moved in with my in-laws. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? And so I started buying airtime on a radio station in Dallas and one in San Antonio. And then I was selling spots to, Jim Bob's fishing guide service on Lake Texoma for like $200. Like, I would make you a commercial and run the commercial for like 2 months if you just give me $200. Like, I was desperate. Now I don't think I would make a commercial for less than that, much less run it on the show.
Well, the economics of hunting, fishing on television and radio have always been really interesting to me. I don't think a lot of people know that like if you watched a hunting show through the early to mid 2000s, even into the 2010s, there's a decent chance that the person paid to get that hunting show on the air. They bought the time from the TV company, which is not normally how that works, right? For every other form of media, typically they'll license your material or whatever, or pay for the production entirely, right? But that's not the case. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Like, how the hell did that happen? Do you know anything about the history of hunting, fishing, TV or radio? How did that become this? I don't understand that.
Yeah. I don't know how that evolved for just that one specific industry as far as TV goes. But if you're a one-off show, like a private show, and you want to put your show on X radio station, you're buying the airtime. Like, the show that follows me in Dallas is like a fitness show. It has nothing to do with that radio station's normal format, right? So anytime you hear that in whatever market you're listening, and usually it's on the weekends, right? Saturday or Sunday morning, it's when that's pretty predominant. Then those people are definitely buying that airtime.
That's
as far as TV, it's weird. It's a good question, and I don't really know the answer.
It has to be that private companies selling stuff were the first ones to make TV shows. That has to be it. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense, right? Like Bass Pro or somebody, one of the boat companies or somebody, lure company, fish rod company, was just making content and paying to have it on as an advertisement for their product. Otherwise, that doesn't make any sense, because nobody would get in. Like, nobody in your position typically would get into media or go to school for it, then get into production and say, you know what, I'm going to pay to get my content out there. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Like, that's completely backwards.
Yeah. But also keep in mind that was before, like, the word podcast didn't exist, or was just like this fledgling concept.
Sure.
And so when I would air the show on the radio, and I started adding, as I started getting more sponsors, I started adding stations. But I just would put it up on iTunes after, on like Monday morning, I would slap it up on iTunes and be like, here's a link. If you missed the show, you can listen to it. I guess, so technically it was a podcast then, but Joe Rogan didn't exist. This whole thing that we're doing now was a foreign concept. It was just a radio show that I put up on the internet if you missed it.
Yeah. So you leave to go back to North DFW area. This is like 2009, 2008.
Yeah.
What do you do then?
We move in with my in-laws, and my wife is She's a nurse practitioner, so we weren't like destitute, but we were like, well, let's figure out where do we want to start a family. So we ended up living with them for probably 4 or 5 months, and then we ended up buying a house in McKinney. But yeah, I started a show on their dining room table with a landline. That's how I used to record interviews. This technology didn't exist, so I would just pick up the phone. We'd have a set time. I'd call you, and I'd record over the landline. The sound quality was garbage. You look back on it now, it was terrible. If I went back and listened to one of those shows 15 years ago, I'd be mortified by what I'm hearing, I'm sure. But yeah, that was the origin of that. And then I started adding stations. I have the one in Dallas and one in San Antonio, the two biggest stations. I buy the airtime. The other 20 or so affiliates, I just give them, instead of a 60-minute show, I give them a 52-minute show, and they can put their own local spots in it. So I don't have to buy the airtime there. And then
you use the other 8 minutes for your own commercials then.
Yeah, or just, I always have like this segment's brought to you by, whatever, Safari Club International. And so that's aside from commercial breaks. But yeah, it is interesting because it is a radio format still. So there are commercial breaks in it, which is a little different than typical podcast form. But
well, I know some people who are doing their shows. Frankly, it's mostly people who came from doing shows in traditional media, that have kind of incorporated that format, that old school format, in like a 45 to 48 minute show with 8 to 12 minutes of whatever ads, or a 22-30 with 7.5 minutes of ads for a half-hour show. Like Michelle Tafoya does that from ESPN. I've done her show a couple times. She we'll record a segment and then she'll read her ad, and then we'll record a segment, she'll read her ad, and they just punch it together like that. But for the most part, most of the people I know are using dynamic insertion for ads now and not doing live reads for the most part. I mean, every now and again you hear people do live reads, but for the most part, from my experience, it's dynamic.
Yeah. Well, you listen to Joe Rogan or whatever, or your podcast or whoever's, and you're in the middle of a sentence, and then boom, there's an ad, and you just pick it back up like nothing happened.
Yeah.
Which that would work for me if it was just a podcast, but it'd be very weird to hear that on the radio. People would be like, "That's foreign." It doesn't really work.
Yeah. So you're doing this stuff, and then that's more kind of on the business side, but you're something of an entertainer as well, I guess, right?
I don't know about that.
Well, you do a show. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's always guest intensive. I mean, I always have at least one, sometimes two guests on, and they might be completely different topics. Like last week I had on, have you ever deer hunted or hunted in Oklahoma?
No, not in Oklahoma, no.
Okay. Well, they increased the non-resident price by double. So for me to archery hunt last year in Oklahoma, which my Oklahoma lease is closer than my Texas lease. It's an hour and 15 minutes to get up, across the Red River for me. Anyway, it was $300 last year if I wanted a bow hunt for the whole season. Now it's $700.
Holy shit!
And if I want a rifle hunt, $500 more. So $1,200 if I want to do rifle and bow hunting. And if I want a muzzleloader hunt, which is like a 10-day muzzleloader season, cool, $500 more. So I had on a guy from Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation this past week, and we just kind of talked about, first of all, Oklahomans were bitching because Texas has more money. So we're leasing up their ground. We're crowding their public opportunity. So there was Oklahomans were kind of disgruntled, but then their wildlife department was operating on a $60 million deficit. So they were like, well, who's going to pay for it? The non-residents. So that was their explanation there. I get it. I mean, if you want to hunt, if you want it bad enough, you're going to do it. But I think it will make people like myself be like, well, I think I'm just going to do archery or just do rifle this year instead of both. I don't know.
Why is it? Are the prices going up to try to dissuade people from coming, or where's the money going? What's the point?
Well, that's what I was asking him, and I think that he didn't give me he gave me a PC answer, but I think the real answer is if we double the price, actually it's $100 more. So it was $300, now it's $700. So we're still going to make $100 off of you if you only do one season instead of two, because last year 2 seasons was $600. So we got you there, and if we price some people out, we're still going to make more money because we're going to have the extra $100 or whatever it is for every non-resident that wants to hunt here. So I think it was definitely a money thing, and also like throwing their constituency a bone, being like, okay, we increased it, so hopefully less people will come, even though we still want their money. So we don't really care if more people come or don't. But
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of dumb shit going on from just a hunter policy. I don't know about fishing so much. I don't really track on that, but hunter policy in general is, let's say, retarded. It's fucking stupid, right?
And
it's
who's
like,
responsible for that?
That's a good question. We can get into that because I don't really know. I have a guy doing research on it right now for this thing we're working on, but I know some, I know some factual tidbits. I know that certain states like Washington and Colorado are like reintroducing predator animals and things like that. It's like, I don't think you know what you're doing. Like they're operating from this like goofy, the wolves have a right to exist too. It's like, okay, cool, man. But what the fuck are you talking about? When they're like going after herds of animals and driving them towards cities or killing them off or whatever. Like, does anybody who's in control of any of this understand anything about wildlife management or conservation at all? That's
no, dude. It's all emotions, right? And they play off of they tug at the heartstrings of the uneducated American citizen that's not against hunting, but is kind of indifferent to it. They don't hunt themselves, but they're like, they see this ad that's in Colorado's the epicenter of it right now with this. They're trying to ban mountain lion and bobcat hunting in Colorado. Well, okay, that's great. We understand, but show me the science that supports that. And there isn't any. It's all emotions. It's all these hunters are killing indiscriminately. Dude, I killed a mountain lion in Colorado. It took me 17 days over 3 different trips. And we shot the right mountain lion. You know why? Because dogs tree the cat. And then you can sex the cat. You can age the cat. It's a great management tool. And if it's not the right one to take, you just let it go. Pull the dogs off it, and we go find another one. So they put out this idea that we're going into dens and clubbing kittens and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's so stupid.
Asinine.
And the same thing, like Connecticut, you can't hunt bears, right?
New Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey the same.
Maybe Connecticut too.
Connecticut for sure. I was just up there,
Okay.
hunting with my buddy. It's like, what I don't like on private land where bears are getting into stuff, approaching human beings and shit like that. You still can't pop one. It's like, come on, man. Like, there's got to be some kind of common sense here.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know about Connecticut. Obviously you were just there, so you can't hunt bears there. New Jersey has the most. And this is crazy because it's such a tiny little state that most people think, wow, it's an urban little, blip on the radar. They have the most bears per capita out of any state in the country. New Jersey. Their governor also has the most power out of any governor in the country, and he's an anti-hunter. And so 2 years ago, he banned black bear hunting. Used just like executive order. We're not doing that anymore. Well, then they had a huge problem. So then last year he opened it back up. He's like, we have too many bears. It's like, no kidding, dude. Of course you do. So now hunters are back, involved with the management. But yeah, the question I was asking you is, where does it all come from? It comes from the left. That's where it comes from, to be honest with you. 99% of all anti-hunting, anti-gun legislation comes from one side. Now, conservatives, we have our own problems with like public land policy. We're not the best at that. But what do I need for me, and personally, what do I need all this public land for if I can't hunt or fish or trap on it?
Sure.
And someone commented on my social media because I said that comment, and they were like, well, you're just exploiting nature then if you always have to get something out of it. And I said, listen, I like to bird watch. I actually have a bird identification book with me. Sometimes it is in my hunting pack. I like to hike. You know what? I like to be hunting while I'm doing those activities. So I was like, I'm not real interested in going on a nature hike personally, but if I'm hunting, I'm on a nature hike, and I love every aspect of it.
Yeah. Also, like just I would encourage that person to read John Locke, which there's a couple of books you could read. The Rights of Man is really nice about just what it means, what the word liberty really means, right? To be able to apply your will and your labor to the earth to extract value out of it and then turn that into wealth. That's literally what the foundation of this country. You know what I mean?
Right.
Odd to that. It's so weird to me how little people know about just basic. Like there's 10 or 15 books you can read, including a textbook called The Preceptor, that are the foundational documents for America, right? Very easy to understand. Nothing, there's no like super complicated like rhetoric or philosophy in there. It's just autonomy for the most part, right? Autonomy and responsibility and how they play a role together. And then, anytime when men get emotional, it's really a problem. Like a man should have emotions and should be willing to show and discuss their emotions. They should never be emotional. That is a problem. Right. Anytime a man is emotional, they have a hormone dysregulation and they need to go see a doctor, frankly. That's just how it is. And when you start making emotional decisions like that, it just doesn't, it never works. I don't understand why people think this is ever going to work. Like, hey, let's make an emotional decision about math. Like, you wouldn't even consider that. A reasonable person would never even consider that. They would laugh at you for even saying it, right?
Yeah. What is wildlife management? At the end of the day, it's math.
It's just fucking math. It's literally an algorithm about, like, the person who actually hunts is going to know that the average, like, axis or whitetail is going to move maybe a click or two during the day. A fucking elk or moose might move 30 clicks overnight if they feel spooked in an area, right? But a dum-dum that's making policy is never even going to know that. They have no idea how any of this stuff works. It's very stupid. Like, I don't understand why we keep putting non-experts in charge of things.
Well, let's talk about Colorado, because they estimate they have 4,000 mountain lions. That's a freaking lot of mountain lions. That's a ton of mountain lions. The population is growing. Hunters take less than 10% annually. So usually that number is between 300 and 400 cats that hunters tag. They're all tracked. When I killed mine, I had to call a game warden. The game warden had to come to my location. He had to pull a tooth out of the cat to age it. He had to sex it. And then he had to put his mark of approval, a tag on it, before I could leave the state with it legally. So they know exactly how many males, how many females, how old they are, where they're taken, and then they have quotas in each unit. If you reach, we killed our 8 cats for the bighorn management unit or whatever it is, then that season's closed.
Yeah.
And it should be. And I'm all for that. But, Colorado just did away with their over-the-counter archery elk tags, which financially, this is the catch-22. So Colorado's revenue brought in by hunting licenses in 2023 was $74 million. This is all public information. $74 million. I think it was 53 of that was from non-resident elk, deer, and it was mostly elk and deer, elk being the number one. $53 million. Okay, now we've dumped wolves on the landscape through what? Emotional ballot box biology. So we're going to let the citizens, the morons in Boulder and Denver that never even get outside, half of them, we're going to let them dictate wildlife policy. Now, where's this $53 million going to come when the wolves eat all the elk?
Yeah, I know shit.
And why did we, just the year after we reintroduced wolves, why all of a sudden are we getting rid of archery elk tags? Well, the wolves have to eat something. You can't have hunters killing the wolves' elk, right?
Yeah.
It's all connected.
It's very silly. Like, certainly every animal out there is going to serve some purpose or another. If, like, for example, and it's why this should be left alone, managed to some degree, right? Like, you don't want to do what the pioneers and natives did to the American buffalo population, right? You don't want to hunt things to extinction.
Certainly. Or even the wolves, right? Like, I'm not anti-wolf.
Yeah.
I'm just anti-bringing more into the equation. Those wolves were already going to get to Colorado anyway because the wolves in Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana are increasing in their population.
And they're going to go where the food is too, right? Like, if there's more, if the population grows of any animal they eat, like wild pigs or whatever, right, then they're going to show up and eat them. That's just how it works. Like, you follow the food. And if there's not enough food for them. They'll either go somewhere else or they'll breed less. That's how it works, right? There's a homeostasis to this stuff that we seem to think we're super smart sometimes about manicuring nature. We think we're smarter than nature all the time. It's so stupid. Like even the climate change stuff. It's like, oh, we're going to destroy the earth. It's like, no, we're not. The earth will be just fine. We may destroy ourselves at some point with nukes or whatever the fuck, but it's not like the earth will be fine. Like 4 billion years ago, a Mars-sized object slammed into the side of the earth, and here we are today, right?
Right.
Everybody's good? Yeah, sweet. So you know what happens when greenhouse gases go up? More trees grow. When greenhouse gases go down, that's why we're on a 12,000-year cycle, and it's been happening for as long as we can fucking tell, right? So I don't know why we think that we're so much smarter than just this massive engine of a universe that's doing all of these things all the time, from the macro scale all the way down to the very smallest scale. We think we're smarter than that, and it's, man, like there's a lot of dumb people out there that think they're quite a bit smarter than they really are.
Oh yeah. Well, and so I said the left is behind it, right? And certainly in Colorado and Washington and California and all these other places where you have, and the predator stuff is the low-hanging fruit. That's the first thing that the anti-hunting groups go after, right? That's not the end game for them. They would be just as happy to say you can't kill an elk. And so their idea is preservation. We just remove ourselves from the equation and let the wildlife sort it out. That might have worked before there were 330 million people in North America, right? That's a dated concept. It doesn't work when our population keeps growing. So us as human beings, the apex predator, the one that walks on 2 feet and has conversations like this, we have to decide how to manage them. That's our responsibility. It's our job to do that, to protect wildlife, right? But who's in charge in Colorado is Governor Polis's husband. He's the animal rights activist behind the whole thing. I don't know if you knew that, but that dude is the one that got wolves reintroduced. He's the one that is behind this whole movement to ban mountain lion and bobcat hunting. And they throw lynx in that equation too, but you can't hunt lynx already in Colorado. They're already protected. So it's going to have a huge domino effect if we lose in November, if the Coloradans don't speak up and, prevent this from happening. I mean, here's the playbook. We gave it to you. Try it in X other states. Let's let the citizenry dictate wildlife policy through voting. Why even have biologists? Why even have guys on staff? Why? We're not going to listen to them. Colorado Parks and Wildlife didn't want wolves reintroduced, but they have a gag order. They couldn't comment on it from the governor. You can't talk about it. You lose your job.
Well, usually when somebody's silencing critics, that's a good thing. That's usually a sign that they know what they're talking about. Yeah. Good God, man. I mean, there's a lot of weird hunter legislation going on around the country, and it's I don't understand. Not just on the left. Like there's other stuff as well that's kind of silly, but primarily these things usually come from the left. And I wonder, there's about 10 million people who are residents of their state, non-felons, over 18, and registered hunters but not registered voters. That seems insane to me. I understand it in concept that they are laissez-faire. I want to be left alone. I don't care about this shit. Disillusioned with politics. I got it, man. I don't like any of these politicians either. They're all a bunch of shitbags. But do you really? When in human history could you just go mind your own business into perpetuity and that's okay? You don't eventually have to fight somebody. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And the longer you wait, the more vicious that fight becomes. All you got to do is show up every 2 years and fucking vote. For the most part, the Nixon made this point back in the day. It's still the point now. If you the silent majority is a silent majority. We're going to disagree on some stuff, and maybe we vote for Democrats sometimes, maybe we vote for Republicans sometimes. But all this dumb bullshit that goes on, like the anti-gun, anti-hunter, the gender bullshit, the Green New Deal, all this stuff. People don't want that stuff. But you got to show. You can't just be like, they're a bunch of assholes. I'm not voting for that. It's like, no, you got to show up and actually do your job, asshole. Yeah, right.
I don't, and it makes no sense why we've historically been so apathetic. But that has to end in November. It has to. There's so much on the line in this election, and you're right. Most of the politicians are crooked, but I think I look at it as, well, what am I leaving for my kids, first of all, and And that leads me to, well, this side's certainly less crooked than the other. Like, they're not trying to mutilate kids. So, and they like to protect hunting and gun ownership, which is, after my family, the most important thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't. The Democrat hunter is, to me, an oxymoron. I don't understand it, because, or the hunter that says, I'm a hunter, but you shouldn't trap. I'm against trapping, or I'm against black bear hunting.
Yeah.
Like, are you in or are you out, man?
Yeah.
Like, there's no tiptoeing around this thing. You're a hunter or you're not.
Yeah.
And I just don't. And I think there's certain people know who I'm talking about. There's certain very popular organizations out there like that have recruited tons of hunters over the last decade, and they vote Democrat, and they recruit Democrat hunters. And to me, you're just watering down my gene pool, because you're the I'm a hunter but crowd. You're not on my team.
Well, what's the but?
I'm a hunter, but I don't think you should own an AR-15. Like, get out of here.
Yeah. What is that? So give me a list of the buts then. They don't want people owning rifles.
Yeah, AR-15. I've heard these people say they don't think people should own AR-15s, first of all. Like, well, come to Texas and let's go hog hunting, and then tell me how you like shooting with the bolt gun.
Yeah. Good luck.
They don't think we should own those. They're so hung up on public lands that they don't share the same ideology as I do, where I don't need the public lands if you take my guns and my right to hunt away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go hiking. Like, I have a gym I can go to get on the treadmill. I want to go hiking with a gun. And it doesn't have to be for deer or elk. I mean, I could easily just go grouse hunting or whatever it is. There's always something. Or fly fishing or, whatever. But when you put public land above your right to hunt, I think you're putting the cart before the horse, and I just don't understand that.
I don't understand the concept of public land in the first place, to be honest. Like, why should the government own land? Jesus Christ. I mean, they shouldn't even exist, in my opinion.
I elk hunt on public land almost every year.
Mm-hmm. I would rather pay an individual who owned that land, frankly, because they're going to do quite a bit better job of managing it, because their bills are real. When the government has bills, they just print money to pay for them. That's why we're $34 trillion in debt. The guy that has actual bills, that has to compete with other ranchers and shit like that, and has to manage his own herd and actually has to pay his bills, right? That guy has to do a good job. He has to, otherwise he goes out of business and loses his property. The fucking government never can lose their property. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, tell me your perspective on that, because I like.
Well, so I think it's some of it is not everyone can afford. Elk hunts are expensive, right? You're not going to find, even the cheap one is $6,000 these days. So you're pricing out a bunch of people in a time where we need hunters, right? We just need hunters to understand like what they're voting for. But we do need hunters, because we're not the silent majority. We're the majority of nothing. Like, I think 5 to 6% of the population hunts, roughly, in there. So we don't have strength in numbers. So there's the opportunity, right? Public land provides opportunity for like, if you didn't draw an elk tag, well, you can still go grouse hunting. All you have to do is buy a tag, and then you've got. I go in the Carson National Forest. It's millions upon millions of acres in New Mexico.
Yeah, but grouse hunting isn't going to cost you $6,000. Neither is hunting an axis or an elk.
Right, but if you wanted to go on a private land grouse hunt, you'd still have to pay somebody $1,000, I bet, for access.
Maybe. Maybe you would, but then somebody else with a lease nearby would charge $500 because they want to make money, right? That's how the market works.
Yeah. I don't know. I love public land, but I don't value it over my right to own a gun or go hunting. Like, it goes back to let's put the cart before the horse, and let's pretend like, let's protect these things and then not have the right to do those activities on the thing that we're trying to protect. Like, now, should the government own as much land as they do? I don't know. I don't think they should be. So in Texas, you live here. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of the mule shoe land grab out in West Texas?
No.
It's part of Biden's 30 by 30.
No.
So that's like a 30 by 30 is where on day, I think it was his 4th day in office, the Biden administration came out and said, we are going to try to protect and acquire 30% of our land mass and 30% of our oceans. That's what their goal was. So what are they doing? They are coming to landowners and trying to buy a plan. And you know what their plans for a lot of this land is? Solar and wind farms. So you have this great habitat. Because you're on this green energy bullshit, You got to take this habitat away from wildlife, and you're going to put solar farms on it. You know where wildlife actually thrives? Places where you drill oil. I know because I'm on 2 leases that have oil production out the ass.
Mm-hmm.
The deer don't care. The deer like, thanks for paving that road for me. Now I just travel down the road instead of having to go through the mesquites. Like every animal takes the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. So this idea that we can't drill responsibly because it's going to rape and pillage our wildlife is completely asinine. But yet you want to put solar farms there. Tell me how you rationalize that.
Yeah, because that literally cannibalizes the land. Like there's nothing else on there except for panels.
You really do rape it at that point, yeah.
Like an oil derrick and a road are not anyway. It doesn't. It has like a 1/1000th of the footprint of the same amount of solar panels it would take to produce that amount of energy.
Yeah,
that's silly.
But yeah, so this mule shoe is I think it's a WMA, and it's currently, I think it's like 20,000 acres. The federal government is trying to get that landmass in West Texas and parts of New Mexico to over 7 million acres that they control contiguously as part, and they're still calling it the mule shoe. But I just did a podcast with this gal, Margaret Byfield of American Stewards for Liberty, and she's like the voice speaking out against this. And because her family had like a 1 million acre ranch in Las Vegas, the Las Vegas area, and the federal government came and took it from them back in the 80s because of the water proximity to Las Vegas and LA. So this is up in the mountains, right? And they were like, we need your water. Okay, but we have like it was federal land, but they had like a 50-year lease on it that they had signed with the government, and it granted them water and grazing rights. And the government reneged and was like, no, we need that water. So that's why she is like firmly invested in she lives in Texas now, but spearheading that effort to just say, hey, landowners, don't sell your land to the government. A lot of it they try to lock up in CRP. So everyone thinks CRP is great. I've hunted pheasants in CRP, which is like where you just don't touch the land, you just leave it for the wildlife, right? But the problem with that is you might sign a 10-year agreement with the government, and then you don't have permission to do anything on your own land. So the government then controls access. Whatever they say is what goes. And just be wary. The government is trying to buy up huge swaths of land, and this is across the country. And at the end of the day, why do they want to do that? To control us, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, my question is back to the earlier conversation, or the conversations before, is how much does that elk hunt cost if the government isn't gouging people for it? You know what I mean? Like, how much does it cost when there's a competition there between two landowners that are right next to each other? Like, I think of southern Utah that has the largest wild elk population in the country. If 6 or 8 human beings own those properties instead of one government, then the economics look quite a bit different.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what is an elk tag in Utah? It's probably $800.
I think it's $600 or $800. Yeah, it's probably $800 now because I think it was $600 the last time I looked.
It's about $800 to $1,000 across much of the West for an elk tag that you already put in for 10 years to try to draw, right? And you've been building points or whatever, so it's actually a lot more expensive than that. But I don't know. If we just took away all public hunting opportunity, I don't know that those prices would come down significantly from the private landowner side. I don't know. But then also, I do believe the government has to be a steward of wildlife and set policy, like limits, right? Like we couldn't just say, hey, you're on private land, so now instead of 15 dove, you can shoot 500 or whatever. There's no limit. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, but a private landowner wouldn't do that unless they were a moron, because that business needs to continue into the future. They're not going to waste their entire supply. That nobody would do that.
I don't know, dude. I deal with a guy on my he's a family member on the deer lease that I'm on. His family owns it. He could care less about that land. His goal is to get every penny out of it until his grandmother dies so that he can sell it. So like logging it, whatever, kind of overpricing the actual lease members. He's not putting anything back. Like, we're the ones that are maintaining the roads. It's crazy. I know. But I don't know. I don't think everyone has that same mindset. I think there are people out there who would just be like, nah, this is my land. I'm going to do what I want, and I'm going to get as much out of it and screw any kind of, sound scientific management.
Yeah, I mean,
there's always people are like that, but
there's always going to be some assholes, right? But the government will always be an asshole, always. I mean, look at what they're doing. They're gouging people. They're trying to use price controls to box people out of the market. They're introducing predator animals. They have no idea what they're doing.
Oh yeah, price controls. That's worked historically. So
yeah.
Ask Russia or Venezuela about
or Rome. Diocletian tried it in the 4th century, and it fucking sucked. It's why he eventually wasn't emperor anymore. But yeah, it's I don't know. Anyways, back to the voting part of it. It's like it's very clear when you discuss these issues in any meaningful way that if you refuse to take part in this process, then fucking geeks are going to make decisions that they don't understand. And it's like we're talking about right now, it's just 6% of the people hunting and whatever the other, maybe let's call it another 6% that they're providing meat to, either through their friends' donation, their family, right? So 12% of the country is actually benefiting from this right now. Any kind of interruption in our supply chain for food, some kind of blight or anything like that, right? And it's a whole different story. Now we're talking about 70 to 85% of people that are going to need that stuff, which is fine, right? That we have the population for it. What is this? Sorry. We've got the population for it, but it's like, man, I go to the DMV and I'm like, fuck, these people shouldn't be in charge of anything. I don't think they're even in charge of their own lives based on the way they perform their jobs, right? Like, how do you find your doorknob to let yourself out of the house every morning? I don't understand. And I think, can I put that group of people in charge of our food supply? That seems like a bad idea, especially after they spent the last 100 years lying to us about what food really is. Eat sugar, eat grains, don't eat fat. Like, shut the fuck up, dude.
Don't eat too many eggs.
Yeah. These people,
eggs like the healthiest thing you could possibly eat.
It is the perfect food, literally. It's the only food that naturally has eggs and milk, I guess, to some degree, but that also has lactose. But it's the only food that has fat, protein, and sugar, right? It's very difficult for me to trust these people to be in charge of anything.
Oh, yeah. I don't trust them. I trust one side a little more than I trust the other, but yeah, they're all, they're all the same, dude. And that's the sad thing is without real term limits. And people are like, well, they have term limits. Yeah, okay. But then they just get reelected. And so what is really a term limit when you're a career politician of 40 years? That's not a term limit. They have a limit on, the amount of time they can serve, but there's no limit on the amount of terms they can serve consecutively. But the president has one. So why are our senators and congressmen able to just, I'm a lifelong politician? Then you forget about what civic duty really is. And it's all about how rich can I get while I'm in office.
Yeah. I mean, the people that are running, and not just the two Democrats, none of the people who are running for office at the federal level right now, Trump, Vance, Walz, Harris, have ever had a real private sector job. Not one of them, right? Like Trump was a CEO of a company, but he was born rich. Let's be real. None of those other three have ever held a private sector job in their lives. Not one, right? It's like, okay, well, how? Certainly doesn't necessarily mean you don't know shit, but it kind of does, frankly, right? Like, you have no idea what it's like. People try to talk about, oh, fucking Kamala used to work at McDonald's. No, she didn't. As a teenager, like, fuck off, dude. I'm talking about a human being with a cubicle job or a manufacturing job that actually, as an adult, had to put food on their own table. At no point have any of these people ever experienced that shit. So how are they going to have the right kind of perspective to look at somebody like yourself or all these hunters out there and say, you know what, I understand why they don't want to trust anybody for their food and want to get it themselves. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. They all lie, that's for sure. And, I mean, you go to a foreign country, they don't look like Americans by and large. They look a lot healthier than we do. So
only the wokest of the woke countries. Like the UK is getting fat now because they're eating a bunch of processed bullshit. But for the most part, Europe is slim.
South Africa? There's no fat people in South Africa.
No, you would probably get cannibalized, to be honest.
It's funny. I asked my PH, Carl, I said, This was a couple years ago, and I just finished my 7th trip over there this summer.
Where was it? Like Mozambique, or is it actually in
South
SA?
Africa.
Okay.
South Africa, Eastern Cape. And I said, I want you to ask Oluwetu, that was the tracker's name, what he thinks of a transgender person. And he's like, I don't think he'll know what that is, but I'll ask him. He asked him, and he just started laughing. And he's like, how do you have kids? How do you? He's like, that doesn't make sense. It's a freaking first world phenomenon. Like, the third world doesn't have time to get mentally ill and cut off their peckers. They're trying to put food on the table. We've gotten so fat and happy here that we create all these problems for ourselves. And by the way, you want to see a racist country? Leave the United States and you will find real racism.
Yeah.
There is racism here. I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't exist and it's not a problem. But this place is the least racist country I've been. Go to Argentina. Argentinians, if you're an Indian from Argentina, they look down on you. The European descent, they're racist towards them. It's everywhere, but it's a lot worse in Africa than it is here. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, not even certainly in Africa, that area, and it goes in both directions down there too, in SA especially. But Europe is racist as shit. I mean,
Italy.
Like, yeah, if you are a black dude walking around in America, it's like you're just some black guy. If you're a black dude walking around in Italy, it's like, who the fuck is that black guy? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like completely different.
They play soccer games with closed stadiums because they throw bananas at the black players on their own team.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no, like, there are real racists here, but there's no real racism. Not institutionally like they say there is. It's just not, that's not a thing. It's fucking stupid.
Yeah, we have it so good we have to create that. And that's what the PH in South Africa was like. I don't understand. He's like, I come to your country every January for these trade shows. He's like, you guys have it so good that you just have to create problems for yourself. Like, you should have just, when the man said, I'm a woman, people should have been like, the F you are, shut up. Instead, we're like, well, how can we help you? You're so brave.
Yeah.
Like,
well, you wouldn't do that with any other mental illness, right? You don't tell schizophrenic people they're brave for flapping their arms around to get the ghosts away. You know what I mean? It's just like, come on, dude. The hell kind of game are we playing here? And it's not only is it stupid, but it doesn't. It's not terribly helpful for the person either to participate in their delusions. Why would you, like, sincerely, fat people and the trans thing, we're just participating in delusions that are destroying people's lives, and we're enabling people to destroy their own lives. And
the financial impact, that's totally different. But like, who's paying for those transgender surgeries? Who's the healthcare system swamped by obese people and all of their health problems?
Yeah. And then, in the name of empathy, we're helping people ruin their lives. Yeah. Not just ruin, but kill themselves. I mean, 75% of self-identified transgender people have attempted suicide. Not thought about it, literally attempted it, 75%. And then, 38% of Americans are either diabetic or in pre-diabetes right now. It's getting close to half at this point.
So why do we pretend like that's not a problem? That's the thing.
Man, I don't know. Well, Lizzo finally got in the gym. She was posting on Twitter about it the other day. And good for her, dude. Good for her. Like, she was really getting after it. And I've talked a lot of shit about her over the years because she's like, everybody talks about how beautiful she is, but if you tell a woman she looks like Lizzo, that date's over.
Okay,
that date's over.
Talks about how pretty she is and how like courageous she is for like saying that she's fat, she doesn't care.
Yeah.
What dude wants to date that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Not me.
I don't know.
But when you name your Instagram Lizzo Be Eating, like, you're not trying to make a change. I'm glad she's in the gym now. That's great.
Yeah, I'm proud of her. Actually, I really am. And hopefully it'll fucking.
We should send her a card.
I would. I mean, like, honestly, it'll extend her life. It'll make the quality of her life better. But again, that's a good example. It's like, you don't have to be like rude to people for no reason, but it doesn't help anybody when you're like, you wouldn't do that to a child. They're trying to put a fork in an electrical socket. You'd be like, oh. He's just a kid that he identifies as a kid that puts forks in electrical sockets. What are we going to do? Like, no, he's going to fucking die, dum-dum.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good Lord.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's goofy nonsense. I want to go back to something you said before. You said Republicans on public land policy aren't terribly good. What did you mean by that?
I mean, well, it's a different opinion from you. I mean, they're trying to take it away.
And do what with it? Like, I don't know what Republicans are even trying to do.
I had Ted Cruz on my show before his last Senate run, and he's buddies with Mike Lee out of Utah, and they kind of have the same mindset. Like the state should own the land, not the feds.
Oh, I see.
And I said, okay, Ted, but going back to the financial thing, I said, not everybody can pay $5,000 for a deer lease. And he didn't really have a good answer for that. He was like, well, most Texans I know, if they want a deer lease, they have one. I was like, dude, the number one question that I get sent is, hey, can you help me find a deer lease? People don't have deer leases. They want them, but it's supply and demand. Like, it is really hard to get on a good deer lease because it either cost or they're full. Like, there's a waiting list at mine. So I don't know. I don't think it's that easy. Is anyone can just get a deer lease? Like, we have a lot of people now.
Yeah.
And there's the one thing we're not making any more of is land.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably quite a bit easier in Texas, at least in West Texas, because there's access out there and they fuck like crazy. But if you're in a especially East Coast area with just mule deer and whitetail, good luck. You know.
But here's the thing. I love being from Texas because I can afford a deer lease. I can shoot X number of deer, while these people that live in Utah or New Mexico, whatever, they might not get a hunting tag that year. They might strike out on their elk and deer tags, and literally they don't get to hunt that year. And that's federally managed land. So you have a point there. So there is a catch. I would much rather just live in Texas and go play in their public land sandbox. When it suits me,
I mean, that's
when I draw a tag.
Definitely not trying to live in Utah. I actually have lived in Utah before.
Trying to live anywhere else.
Yeah. I mean, Texas is pretty good for most things. The property taxes are a little out of control, but aside from that, not a lot of complaints. They could have. The Republicans over the last 10 years could have fixed the energy grid like they were paid to do, but
yeah,
what are you gonna do?
There's none of them are perfect, but we don't have a state income tax, so the property taxes are high. But my property taxes have gone up because so many damn Californians come in and pay cash, and overpay for what was a $400,000 home now is $700,000. So yeah, it's going to drive your property taxes up. But they sell their little, and I know because one of my high school buddies, he lived in San Francisco. He had like I think it was 1,100 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1-bath house that was built in the 1930s. It was like $1.3 million for that. And he's like, it's a shithole. But you sell that, you come to Texas and you buy a mansion. Pay cash for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think the government should even exist, to be honest. I hate it. I don't want to pay any taxes for anything. If I need something, I'll go buy it. Just stop spending my money on other countries and shit. That'd be nice.
Well, that's a big part of the problem.
Yeah.
Like, who's getting rich off the Ukraine war?
It's not me.
They're already rich, and they're just getting richer, and you and I are sitting here like middle class. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
We're not getting. My groceries are getting more expensive. I'm not making any more money.
No, I mean, but Lockheed's doing pretty well. General Dynamics, Raytheon, they're all doing really well. KBR is doing really well.
Bomb making is good business.
It is, unfortunately. So now you've got the Lone Star. Tell me about that.
Yeah, Lone Star Outdoors Show. That's just the radio show / podcast that I put out. A new episode every week. Some weeks I do like a campfire conversation, and I release that as well. So usually you get 6 or 7 shows a month, and it's just guest conversational like we're doing today on different topics, and probably have some politicians on leading up to the election cycle. But generally it's all hunting, conservation, Second Amendment, fishing. You know what? I used to do a lot more fishing content, but I couldn't get any fishing related sponsors. Like, they were really, really tight, like budget wise. And so I'd say it was probably like 60-40 when I first started. Now it's probably like 90-10.
Oh, really?
Just because I was like, I'm going to talk about the stuff that the companies that are supporting me and the things that my audience will use, like their products, like what's relatable. And while I love fishing, it's just like, God, that one was a tough nut to crack. But
why is it that there are smaller margins?
I think so. I look at it as I have a rifle sponsor. So how many if they're paying me X dollars, how many rifles do they really have to sell to make their money back? Not that many. But if I'm selling you a $5 fishing lure, okay, now we got to sell a lot of lures. So I don't know. I think, margins and just the gross number of actual units I would have to move, I think has something to do with it. But the actual answer, maybe somewhere in the either, I don't know.
Maybe it's but who kept those fucking TV shows on the air, buying airtime for all those years? It probably wasn't lure companies. I mean, it was probably the boat companies, I would imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. The boats.
And you mentioned
Boaters.
Politicians. Who are the ones that you mentioned? The guys that want to bring it back to the state level. But are there any politicians out there that are better on these issues, in your opinion?
Democrats. Like, if you're pro public lands, and that's why all these guys vote Democrat. But then you're voting, going back to this is a circular conversation now, but now you're voting against hunting and guns. So, yeah, the Democrats are better on public land policy. But I always just say, hey, I think there is somewhere we can meet in the middle. Let's protect our right to hunt and own guns, and then circle back on public lands and try to protect those. If that's what's most important to you, I mean, I'm going to help you. I'll fight for that. I don't. DeSantis right now is trying to build hotels on these state parks, and I love DeSantis. And I opened up a can of worms because I commented on one of the more popular guys with Meat Eater Crew, and I was like, I love DeSantis, but because he has a spine and because he protects children from predators. And I will agree with you. This is a swing and a miss, though. So tell me where to leave a public comment, and I'll go leave one.
Yeah.
But then they were like, this. He responded. He's like, this guy's he's all political now. He doesn't even focus on the hunting and fishing anymore. That was his response to me. And I was like, bro, I'm always focusing on the hunting and fishing, but I don't put public lands above hunting and fishing. Am I right to own certainly to own a firearm? And you do. It's like, why do I need the public lands once my guns are gone? So
yeah, that's
totally different mindset.
Yeah, that seems kind of silly. I mean, so what can Republicans do to speak to hunters better then?
On public lands?
On any issue, like if hunters, it is retarded to me that a hunter of any sort would vote for a Democrat ever, frankly.
Yeah.
Especially these days. So how are Republicans fucking this up, and how can they fix it from your perspective?
I don't think our politicians talk about hunting enough. First of all, like, if they were out there saying hunting is a viable wildlife management tool, it's also the thing that funds all you granola eating backpackers out there. You like your public lands, fine, then let hunters continue to hunt because they're paying your part, and we do it gladly. I don't care. I'll pay for them. Fine, go eat your granola, go on your hike, whatever. I'm happy for you. Everyone should enjoy the outdoors. That's another thing. Like, if everything was privatized, could everyone still have, just don't even talk about the hunting, but the people that do want to go bird watching and hiking and this other stuff, you're not actually physically taking something from the resource. Well, as Americans, I think they should have the right to do that. And maybe that's kind of a socialistic view of it, but I think everyone should be able to get outdoors and enjoy what God's created for us in some capacity. And if it was all private, I don't think those people would be allowed on. I mean, I would close off my ranch. I wouldn't want random people on it if I owned a ranch, personally.
But why not? I mean, like, if it's okay for the public land, why wouldn't it be okay for your private land?
Because we're selfish people. It's mine. Like, I don't know. Would you, if you had a big ranch, would you just open it up to whoever and be like, here, the gate's open, y'all, come on.
I mean, I would have a gate with a person standing there, right, to make sure that it wasn't assholes coming in. And if people are coming in with weapons, I would want them to, like, it's clear that you're hunting now, so you're gonna have to fucking follow the rules. Sure, yeah.
And pay.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. It depends on what you're doing, right? Like, I know my buddy has this area where. I think it's in West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. He was telling me about it. He doesn't live there. But people come onto the land to fish. Good fishing there, right? And he's just like, yeah, just drop off some of the fish when you're done, right? That's also kind of socialist, to be honest, right? To some degree. But, yeah, it's a fucking Maybe these are pipe dreams in today's America because people just aren't. They're not responsible or respectful enough anymore to do stuff like that. To be honest,
I guess on the public lands thing, this is where I will leave it. Is it failed in Europe? They've privatized everything, and now all hunting occurs on private land, and a lot of people can't participate. And there's less. 6%'s not a lot. They have less than that in Europe, across the board. And I'm more talking about like England, their hunting culture, and they have a great culture, but it's now becoming a rich man's thing, and a lot of the big game hunting occurs behind fences on preserves. I don't know. I think our wildlife model works, right? We have tons of wildlife, and all of our species are recovered, and I think a lot of that is because of certainly like elk and mule deer, moose. Most of those animals are on public land. I don't know if privatizing that would be beneficial to the wildlife, but I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it
didn't work in Europe.
No, and Europe is quite socialist, and which lends itself to allow non-competitive betting on things, right? I mean, they say that it's open to the public, but in reality, it's just backroom deals. That's how it always goes, frankly. So maybe it wouldn't work. I don't know. At any rate, we got to get out of here. So tell everybody, tell everybody where they can find you and all your programming and shit like that. And then if they're interested, if they're a hunter and any of this stuff speaks to them, if you have any words of advice on that about voting.
Yeah, so go over to vote and then the number 4 America.org. It's a great resource, but Vote for America, I'm obviously saying vote conservative. They don't endorse any candidate. They just want hunters to take a buddy to the poll. Someone that did not vote last year, mom, brother-in-law, guy at your deer lease, whatever, you're taking them to the poll this year. You're holding them accountable, and you're saying, we're going to go vote because your vote matters. And so that's voteforamerica.org. Follow them on Instagram. They're very active there. And let's stem the tide, because the end game for these people is just to do away with hunting altogether. So if you're a hunter, get out there, go vote. And then if you want to follow my stuff, it's just LoneStarOutdoorShow.com, or you can find the podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. And this is the same on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Sweet. Well, cool, man. Thanks for coming today. Appreciate all the information.
Yeah, great conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, anytime. And thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.